tracks, we need a demonstration. So I'm joined at the grand piano by Tom Donald from the London Contemporary School of Piano, who's going to show us the inner workings of George Martin. So Tom, I think a lot of us, by me, have never quite understood what the producer does or adds somehow. So give us an example, a George Martin example of what a producer does to kind of take a vanilla track and make it sing, so to speak.
Well, you get a great song like Eleanor Rigby. You would imagine the demo perhaps sounding a bit like this, you know. And, you know, he gets this and transposes it, transcribes it for a string quartet with the... You know, these sort of sounds you would expect to hear that in Bach, not in pop music.
Indeed so.
Yeah.
And so you'd make an absolutely enormous difference. You mentioned string quartets because his thing was his classical background and managing to blend the rock and roll
and blend it together, and not just the older classical music like Bach. You know, if you look at A Day in the Life, that last iconic track from Sgt. Pepper's, you know, if you listen to just the original part of the beginning of the track, it sounds like a fairly, you know, standard Beatles song until he brings in Stockhausen influence. Now, Stockhausen is an avant-garde German composer who's more known to create sounds like this, very uncommercial, you could say, and, you know, brings this element. It's almost impossible to do on a piano, but he brings this to the orchestra in his orchestral arrangement. It's quite remarkable how he brings those two polar opposites together.
It's interesting listening to some of the archive. You think of the Beatles, rock and roll band, but actually, and certainly the early days, there was that. Of course, I mean, you're playing it on the piano here, but he did bring a lot of other instruments in as well, so it was orchestral, a lot of it.
Yeah, and some really odd choices of instruments sometimes. Get a song like Fool on the Hill, now you would imagine the demo sounding like this. You know, a lovely melody. But he decides to bring in a bass clarinet into the bass rather than a typical bass guitar. Now, most people don't even know what a bass clarinet looks like. And he's accenting the bass clarinet on the first and third beat of the bar, which is very not pop music. It's very classical. Certainly, you know, most people clap to pop songs on the second and fourth beat of the bar, but it's like you're at a panto, you know, clapping along to the songs with the kids or something.
Yeah. I mean, look, for everything you're saying, and a little bit of what he was saying, you would have to think, of the five, he must, maybe this is sacrilege, he's the most musically accomplished, right? Or,
I think it's unimaginable to me what the Beatles would have sounded like without George Martin.
Yeah. I mean, is he known in classical circles? Do you consider yourself a classical pianist?
Well, yes, I've got a strong classical background, but I'm really fascinated by musicians who can cross the boundaries, and so effortlessly, like he did. Because, you know, what I've said today almost sounds like it's ridiculous, like it's... but the way he integrated it with their songs, it just works so beautifully, and it's part of that legend, I think.
Thanks so much for demonstrating it. Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And that is all we have time for. Kirsty will be here tomorrow. Until then, good night.